Great. So we're back again, fully convinced, lesson 3, talking about we just broke into this. Gabe was sharing what a challenge it is to give an apology in a group, in a casual setting, maybe a dinner or barbecue, and people derail the conversations with just their flippant remarks. And I was commenting about Sting's song all this time, where he says that men go crazy in congregations, they only get better one by one, which makes me think about Van Til talking about buying a cup of coffee for somebody. It's interesting. If you've never heard Father Frederick Copleston and Bertrand Russell, the famous atheist philosopher who wrote the book Why I Am Not a Christian. By the way, he wrote that book because he felt Matthew 24 never came true because Christ didn't return in that generation, which is an eschatological thing. Yeah, he did. He returned in judgment in 70 AD. But anyways, this debate with Father Copleston and Bertrand Russell, and I think it was Ravi Zacharias, Dr. Zacharias, who said everybody would listen to that debate. You can find it on YouTube, and you'll have stills of their headshot, and they're talking, and it's very cordial. They're, incredibly respectful of each other. Hard to find that today. And Ravi Zacharias says, yeah, they climbed so high up the ladder of abstraction, no one knew what they were talking about. I mean, in the debate, it was Russell and Copleston, and they're probably the only two people that even knew what they were talking about. Very advanced philosophical concepts. And so you can go to a public debate. It's probably not my gift. I'm not an academic, a scholar. I'm not a professional philosopher like, Greg Bonson was. Greg was particularly well suited for that because of his degree in philosophy, the fact that he was a pastor, and he was gifted in that capacity. Debate is a skill. But back to that song by Sting. They only get better one by one. And Van Til would talk about you pay for the coffee and you buy the next cup of coffee and you keep asking the questions and you have these one-on-one conversations. Gabe, I agree. The barbecue is a challenging venue to give an effective apologetic because of all the competing voices. But when you're sitting down with somebody at coffee, unlike TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, they're aware no one else is really listening. It's just you and them, and you get the real person, right? You get access to them. But when they're posting these public comments, you don't get the real person because they don't want to look bad, maybe be embarrassed, or they're going to say things to save face. I see it all the time. That's why I was remarking that when I offer to do the internal critique, the indirect comparison of unbelief and belief, Christianity versus, X, whatever that is, the moment I'm asking for their position, they tend to get quiet and go away because they know that people are reading this stuff or they're in public. So 100% agree. I think the best apologetic is the first one, as I said, is when you're all by yourself. That's the best apologetic. I'm practicing my apologia for myself, whether I'm taking a shower and praying the Lord's the 23rd Psalm or the first Psalm or the Lord's Prayer. I'm always thinking about any doubts that I might have, which there aren't many left, and how would I apologize those. But I also practice about when I'm with that person one-on-one, what am I going to be saying? So 100% agree.
Yeah, I think if I could just tack on to your comments real quick that, you were mentioning how they go away, right?
Yep.
They go away. And I was thinking that part of the reason that they're going away is because you said maybe it's a face saving thing that they're doing. They're trying to save face.
Yeah.
Because they're not prepared themselves to give an apology for their position, as much as they are ready to just simply predicate and to make predications about what they believe or what they believe is true. And I was going to recommend that and I alluded to it in the text chain, that maybe I would like to recommend that we would do because we would do logic, that we would do a session on logic,
Mhm.
and I know you want to focus on sola scriptura, and that's great. We can go sola scriptura, but I was going to recommend that as uh, line it up next and do logic, because um, logic seems to be reason, and logic seems to be something that unbelievers at least claim to believe in
Yeah,
and respect.
right.
And so I feel that's one of my weakest areas,
Hmm.
and so I really want to be better at that instant recognition of spotting the circular reasoning, or spotting the ad hoc, not the ad, that's easy, spotting the red herrings, and the all these fallacious forms of reasoning and thinking, spotting them, and not just calling them out, but just identify. Because once I can spot it,
Yeah.
then I can operate.
Yeah, no, and you know, we did the intro, which was the 8 questions. We talked about ASMG, the acronym, attitude, one of humble boldness, the starting point, revelation, the method, an indirect comparison, and the goal, unconditional surrender. So that was week one. Then week two was the intro to
Mhm.
philosophy, and we talked about a worldview. A worldview. Remember, I had a simple summary of what is RTR, what is real, what is true, what is right, and what was real was what? That was called what? What's the big philosophical term about
Oh,
reality?
metaphysics.
Right. So that's what's real.
Mhm.
And then, in Milton, what is the big philosophical word when we talk about truth, or how we know what we know? What is true was,
Epistemology.
yep. Yeah. And then the last one, what is right? In other words, human conduct. What's the right way to behave? That was just ethics or morality. So week one was really about worldview. We defined the Christian metaphysic, epistemology, and ethic. Off the top of your head, Gabe, without looking at notes,
Mhm.
as it is right now, what's the Christian metaphysic in your mind? The most basic way you would conceive of it.
The Christian metaphysic.
Yeah, the Christian theory of reality. If you were to break reality down to its most fundamental, say, components, we talked about two.
Uh, well, revelation is one.
This was the theory of reality. So we had the creator and the creature.
Creature.
So that's the Christian metaphysic in a nutshell, the creator creature distinction. We actually
Mhm.
had a little sidebar and a follow-up about that, where Van Til talked about how in the Garden of Eden the enemy tried to ruin or take away, to destroy the creator creature distinction. The
Mhm.
moment you have a creator creature distinction, there's a form of dualism, meaning in reality that there's a creator and there's that which he created. He's not part of his creation. We're not panentheists or pantheists. God's separate from his creation, but he made his creation. So you could boil reality down to creator, creature, and anytime somebody says all is one, all is water, all is air, all is fire, all is boundless, they're destroying.
Eliminating.
Yep, they're attempting to erase
Mhm.
creator creature distinction. So when Satan told Eve, "You're not going to die. God doesn't know." Van Til was making the point, how could Satan claim to know what only God could know? So he was destroying the creator creature distinction. That's how he deceived them. So that's our the R of RTR, reality, is the creator creature distinction. We could add more flesh on the bone, talking about which I did, the self-attesting Christ creates all, John 1, without him, nothing was made that was made, right? So still he is separate from his creation. And then Hamilton, we have the Christian theory of knowledge, right? So you already answered that the philosophical term for your theory of your knowledge, how you know what you know, was epistemology. So how do you answer what is the Christian theory of knowledge? How do Christians know what they know? Ultimately, Christians can use science, they can use reason, but how do they ultimately know their worldview, their ultimate standard?
Lord.
Revelation. God reveals. So Christians are said to have a revelational epistemology.
Mm.
Right? That's the ultimate standard. Now I can use logic, like Gabe was talking about earlier, but does logic create itself? Does logic account for itself? No. Logic is a tool that exists inside of a person, somebody with a mind. So logic, as Van Til would say, is a proximate presupposition. It's not an ultimate presupposition. In other words, logic, although it's a presupposition, because to try to deny it, I have to assume it. You go, oh, that's a presupposition. Is that the ultimate presupposition? Does logic account for my five senses? No. Does it account for me existing in a body with a soul? No. Logic requires something before it. Logic is also a reflection of how God thinks. So logic is not an ultimate presupposition. So when we say we're revelational epistemology, we're just saying that's our ultimate theory of knowledge. Subsumed under that theory of knowledge is empiricism and rationalism. Those are subordinate or proximate presuppositions that function within the ultimate. So revelational epistemology is the ultimate standard. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And then the ultimate ethic. Ethics was simply human conduct. Well, the ultimate ethic is, you know, if I get into a debate with somebody, can I win it? Can I win the debate with a firearm or, a club? Can I be violent to win a debate? No. Debating assumes an ethic that you're not going to destroy your opponent physically. You're going to use words. You're going to argue, right? So the ultimate ethic for the Christian, again, goes back to God. God is holy. He reveals our epistemology. What he reveals includes human conduct and ethical behavior, and it's all based on his character. That's why Augustine would say we think God's thoughts after him. In the same way as I think it's Leviticus 18, where God will give a moral imperative and then he'll say, I am Jehovah, right? You've read that where he says, and man shouldn't lie with a man as with a woman. I am Jehovah. Like multiple moral imperatives. And then he ends it with, I am Jehovah. And what he's saying is that my law is from my character. So when you behave this way, you'll be like me. So those are the Christian philosophy of life, right? And then we talked about a worldview. And maybe without looking at notes, would either of you like to take a shot at defining what's a worldview? We know it has real, true, and right,
Yeah.
but how would we give a definition of a worldview?
A worldview is a network of presuppositions
Mhm.
not tested by natural science, by which the world is interpreted,
Mhm.
reality is interpreted and explained and understood.
Yep, I like it. Yeah, interpreted and interrelated is the words that Greg Bonson used,
Mhm.
and so the key is that it's not a single belief, it's not a brute fact,
A
but
web.
it's a relationship of beliefs, right? And one belief implies other beliefs, and this will continue to develop as we go through the catechism. But that was a great job, Gabe. That's a worldview, and this was the advanced question, which was number 17. It was the last one, and it was how are a metaphysic and an epistemology interrelated? And this was question 17. So, do you remember that Dr. Bonson used the analogy of a machine of some kind?
Of
Remember?
the apple sorting machine or oranges.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. So
What did that machine need to have? What was a precondition of having that machine that could
it
sort
needed,
good
it
and bad
needed,
ones?
yeah, uh, the, it needed to have the, it needed to have, uh, it needed to know that what constitutes a good apple versus a bad apple.
That was the
So,
metaphysics.
yeah,
It's got to know. You can't sort good from bad if you don't know what good and bad are, right? So you
right.
have to know what that is. And then the procedure for determining good from bad was the epistemology. So the metaphysic implied the epistemology, and the epistemology implied the metaphysic. Dr. Van Til would say you can't ask how you know without asking what you know. So that was week 2. We had the intro. We had the intro to the Christian worldview. We defined it. And this week, I'll share my screen. I'm going to be going through, and hopefully you had a chance to read these. So let me go share desktop. I'm just going to share the preview for now. Yes, fully convinced. So you should be seeing share right there. All right, and I'll censor this for me. So now we're going to go through 18 through 37. Gabe, you wanted to learn about logic. So we're now beginning philosophical tools, part 1. Where is that at, right? Catechism part 2 is philosophical tools. So we did the intro, and now we're doing part 1 of the philosophical tools. There's only 3 parts to this. We're going to get to logic, we're going to get to fallacies, all that. We're going to start with the real basics. And question 18 is where we're going to begin. Lesson 3 in philosophy. What is a subject? Had you ever heard of the term subject apart from grammar? Maybe that's a way I can ask it.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Hey, Milton,
Mm-hmm.
are you familiar with the term subject, but not from a grammar standpoint, but from a philosophical standpoint?
Yeah, once I started studying theology, it came up a lot.
Yeah, it does. It has synonyms in philosophy. Okay. The subject is the knower, and the object that's perceived. So I'm seeing a spindrift in a 12-ounce can here. I'm the knowing subject perceiving the known object. The spindrift here is the object, and I'm the knowing subject. Okay. So a subject is a knower, and you either conceive or perceive of ideas. The object is that which is known. So that's 18 and 19. Um, how are subjective and objective knowledge claims different? So when we say something is subjective, what are we talking about? Gabe, what's an example of somebody making?
Yeah, so something that is subjective is pertains to the subject. So I'm the subject, right?
Yeah,
So so um, if I um, if I experience something, and I can talk about what I'm seeing, hearing, or describing, uh, um, it's coming from me because I'm the one that's, sensing the object.
correct.
Yeah. So yeah, is
A
that
subject, yeah, a subjective claim is contained inside the subject. It's not public. It's not inspectable unless you publish it, verbalize it, right? So a subjective knowledge claim is something that originates from a subject, somebody that perceives or conceives of knowledge. An objective claim, when we talk about objective, remember the spindrift, I observed that, that's outside my body.
right?
Like if I affirm the Bible as true, and somebody says, "Oh, that's just pure," if you listen to the debate between Dr. Bonson and Jerry Matitix
Mhm. The
whatever
Catholics,
Catholics, yeah, and Father Michael Manning. At one point, Greg quoted John 10:27, talking about authority, and he said in John 10:27, Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice, they are known by me, and they follow me."
Mhm.
And Matitix replied, "That's pure subjectivism." And Greg immediately replied something to the effect of, "We're going to have to stop the debate and deal with your misunderstanding of subjectivism because it's based on the objective testimony of God's revealed word." And he was talking about the Bible. Anybody can go get a Bible. It's outside of their mind, outside of their body. They can open it and they can read what I can read. It's objective in the standpoint of revelation. That's not subjectivism, right? So if the Bible is God's word and he revealed it, then it exists and it's publicly inspectable, right? So when I say, well, I know, I'm not just saying Jesus loves me, this I know. Remember, I'm adding something to that. For the Bible tells me so. That's an objective claim that's contained in the scriptures. All right.
But Adam, wouldn't they come back with, yeah, but the Bible is subjective because it was written by subjects, by other men.
That's going to come up. Of course, they're going to say this was just the subjective, uh, arbitrary opinion of people who didn't have computers and photocopiers and they played a game of telephone. You get all those kinds of arguments. And so the
Right.
Bible can't be trusted because it's the product of just a bunch of subjective, uh, cognition, right? And we'll deal with that because remember, our apologetic isn't just announcing that the Bible is the Word of God. And now that it's in print in a book outside of my mind, that makes it the Word of God. And I have to abide by this objective standard. That's not our apologetic, just making the announcement.
Mhm.
The apologetic is it first must make the claim that it's the Word of God. Thus saith the Lord, the prophets say over and over, right? It's got to make the claim, but then it has to make good on the claim. And the second part of the apologetic is that without that claim, it undermines the preconditions of intelligibility. You couldn't be logical. You wouldn't know what's real. You wouldn't know what's true. You wouldn't know what's right. You would be left in subjectivity. So the proof becomes that transcendental argument based on the impossibility of the contrary. So some people will say when I argue with atheists, go, "Oh, every religion has a book." When Bonson debated Eddie Tabash in 1993 at UC Davis in front of 1,100 students, Mr. DeBosch made that very claim. He goes, "Yeah, you can have some guy come out of the Hollywood Hills and or West LA and say he's God, and that doesn't make him God, and that's not the Christian. That's not a refutation of the Christian position, because the Christian position isn't just making the announcement that they're God. After all, there's a ton of competing authorities that do that, but it's first making the claim, so you take it serious that it's making the claim. Secondly, giving evidence or making good on the claim, which takes us into that um, various forms of evidence, Van Til being the transcendental argument, the impossibility of the contrary.
On the preconditions of intelligibility,
Mhm.
a lot of times we just we go like we speed right through that. And
Mhm.
maybe if you can walk us slowly through that, because when someone says, and I understand, by the way, I understand when we make a comment like an unbeliever or a believer without God's revealed word,
Mhm.
um, um, they can't know logic, they can't know, ethics, they can't know anything. What we're really saying is not that they can't know it or use it. What we're saying is that they can't justify their use of it, or they just can't make sense of it. What is it? Where did it come from? How do I reconcile it?
Yep.
Is that what we're saying?
Absolutely. Justification was the key word that you used. Dr. Van Til would say atheists can count, they just can't account for counting.
And that was that his way of saying atheists can use math, but they can't justify the use of mathematics.
Right. And one of the fundamental reasons why were the universals and the particulars. Remember, we did our little exercise about nobody's ever seen a number, and I theoretically drew on in air the Arabic numeral 2, and then I drew the Roman numeral 2, and I said, what is this? And you say, oh, that's the number 2. Time out, be careful. Are you sure that's the number 2? Yeah, it's the number 2. Okay, I'm erasing it. Since you're an atheist and the only thing that's real is matter, I've just destroyed that thing that you talked about, so you can't ever talk about it again. Right. And if you go to the store and something costs $1.20, you're gonna have to say you're gonna have to take $1 or $1.10 or $1.30 because 2 doesn't exist anymore. It's been destroyed, right? Nobody thinks that.
Okay, so you just erased the number 2,
Huh?
okay? And the atheist might get a laugh out of that. They might laugh
Mhm.
and they could say, well, yeah, but I know that the number 2 still exists because it exists in my mind.
Uh-huh.
At that point, we agree with them and say, yes, that's right. And that is showing you that you are not living by your own worldview.
Correct. So
Does that make sense?
it does. I'm
Mhm.
gonna make a tiny correction to that.
Okay.
Spot on. We're talking about a universal because with the Arabic numeral 2 and the Roman numeral 2 or the Japanese ni, whatever that symbol looks like, yet they all point to the same thing. Where is the thing that they're pointing to? You mentioned in the mind. Well, it is in the mind, but it's not ultimately in the mind because when your brain, when you
When
die,
I die,
and your brain is dust, it's still going to exist, right? So you know it in your mind because God knows it ultimately in his mind and he reveals to you. So that universal category can't just be in the brain. It's got to be in a
somewhere
more
else.
ultimate place, right? So yeah, but
That's what we're trying to show the unbeliever or the atheistic unbeliever at this point is that
correct.
by them continuing to talk about these immaterial realities,
Yep.
they are contradicting themselves. They are opposing themselves.
That is correct. And the crucial step in apologetics is to argue with them for how God revealed about them and not to argue with them for what they claim about themselves, because what they're constantly doing is jumping from their worldview into our worldview, borrowing from it, then coming back and using what they borrowed to attack. And they don't stand still um, committed to their presuppositions. So at the end of the Stein-Bonson debate, Greg and Dr. Stein had written correspondence for about, I don't know, 6 months back and forth. And at one point towards the end, Greg made the comment that, if what you said is true, you wouldn't be able to balance your checkbook, basically. You wouldn't be able to do math. And Stein, his response in writing was, how can you say I can't balance my checkbook? I do balance my checkbook. And to which Greg replied, well, then obviously you're not living according to atheist presuppositions. Right. So that's the challenge is they don't stick or
Stein never understood.
yeah, never got that.
He never understood that he was um,
Living on borrowed capital.
that he was in conflict with the very same things he professed.
Yeah.
So one of the things that makes me laugh when I think about this conversation is imagine we're fighting a war,
Mhm.
and the three of us are in the fortress. And in our fortress, we have our weapons, our ammunition, our rifles, our grenades, our knives, our swords. We have everything, right? We have
Right.
all the implements of war. And what we do, we open the door to our enemy and then we give them all kinds of weapons. And then we tell them, now go out there and let's start fighting some more.
Yeah, exactly. That happens with evidentialists all the time, right?
And if we're not calling them out on the conflict and on the contradictions, then
Mhm.
we're just as guilty as the evidentialist.
That's the point.
I would agree.
We can't let them off the hook.
Yeah, it's not as if they have a gun and we have a gun, and bullets are analogous to facts, and their gun, their philosophy of fact, shoots bullets, facts, and I have a gun, my philosophy of fact shoots bullets, facts. It just turns out that the Christian gun's more powerful or faster or whatever than no, they don't have a gun. They're borrowing from our worldview to get a sense of a philosophy of fact that's intelligible, defensible in order to attack the worldview.
Inconsistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not consistent with what they're professing to believe.
They are not living or philosophizing consistently with their presuppositions. You're just,
And that's the fancy way of stating it.
yep, you're just going to see that over and over again.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we got philosophy, there's a subject, there's an object, there's objective versus subjective knowledge claims. Those are pretty basic. What is a presupposition? This word gets used differently. Different Christian apologists will use the word presupposition, but some will use it as a more of a hypothesis or a supposition. So here's the definition. A presupposition is a foundational or primary assumption held a priori, that's Latin for before the facts of experience. You can test a hypothesis, you can test a supposition. You cannot test a presupposition because they are assumed prior to experience. So I have a ton of examples that I use. Presuppositions are faith commitments. Can you prove the reliability of your memory without using your memory? That's a great one. Most people can grasp that.
Yeah. So talk about that one a little bit more, because
Mhm.
I hear you use it a lot, and for some reason that example I do struggle with it.
Okay. It'll come up later as we go through the philosophical tools, but right now,
Okay.
the reason I like it is because the person considers a challenge. Okay, I have to prove my memory is reliable. If your memory wasn't reliable, you couldn't talk because talking requires first conceptual understanding of an idea that you express with words. That idea has to have a definition. It's something you had to learn in the past that's reliable in the future. And your memory's involved in that entire process. If your memory was completely unreliable, you couldn't say your memory was unreliable because you wouldn't be able to remember it, right? So the very attempt to even you don't even have to utter a word, and you're going to use your memory to begin thinking if your memory is reliable, right? Now, can your memory make mistakes? Of course it can. That's not the question. Is it reliable as a creature of God so that when he says this, this commandment, right? You shall, not bear false witness. You remember what that means. God made us in a way to have a memory that can know his will, learn from science, engage in the world. Doesn't mean our memory is perfect. The question's really about, that your memory has some reliability in it. If it did not, you couldn't speak, you couldn't communicate with anyone. So that's a very simple way. I use it more so because when I'm in dialogue or interaction with skeptics, they're going to put me in a category of a person that has faith, and they think they're over here. I'm over here dealing with the facts. They think I'm subjective and they're objective, right? And
Right.
they don't perceive themselves as having any faith. That's the point. So I like to just reach in there and ask them, prove the reliability of memory without using your memory. And then they have to go, well, I can't. I'll go, oh, okay. That sounds like a presupposition. It's something, in order
Hmm.
for you to answer it, you already have to believe in it. Then I would give them another one. I would say, I would like you to deny or disprove the laws of logic, but don't use the laws of logic to do it. Well, then what laws do you want me to use? I'd like you to use the monkey bar logic. Monkey bar logic? What is that's irrational. See, you're assuming your standard. You're already in this presupposition. Presuppositions are not something that you can avoid. That's why they're called pre. A supposition is more akin, as we'll see, to a hypothesis, but a presupposition is not something that you can analyze or evaluate independent of it. It's a, it's a precondition.
Yeah. So our opponents are guilty of everything they accuse us of.
Yeah.
They don't realize it neither. We have to show them their
Yeah.
inconsistency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't realize that they're full of faith commitments
Exactly.
and that they don't see themselves as religious.
Correct.
But if you have a faith commitment by their own, declarations, um, uh, they would they'd have to be in that same category as us as religious, but they're not religious towards the true and living God, right? So they're religious.
Yeah.
That's our purpose. I feel like us doing this method is to bring conviction like this.
Mm-hmm.
If we could convict them strongly, they have the ability to change the way they're thinking and hopefully repent. So I think this is very important when we're dealing with unbelievers or other Christian groups, as
Mhm.
it brings conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. So a presupposition, um, it's foundational. It's a primary assumption. You can test a hypothesis or a supposition, but you can't test a presupposition because they're assumed.
And the examples you love to use are the reliability of memory, the laws of logic. You were going to mention one other one, Adam.
Yeah, I do memory. I do LSM, logic, science, and ethics. But I always like to begin with memory because it's a real simple one. Greg would say that that challenge, proving the reliability of your memory without using your memory, is one of the more difficult epistemological challenges and
For
dialogue
the unbeliever.
for anybody, really. But as a Christian, why can I rely on my memory? Well, God made me in his image. He gave me mind, will, emotion, and memory. He imposed order on creation, therefore it behaves regularly, so I can depend on the definition I learn about a word in Webster's dictionary and use it consistently over time. And
So that is our explanation.
yeah.
And if the atheist doesn't like it,
Mhm.
at that point we say to them, give me something better.
Yeah, justify it.
Give me an alternative.
You've negated God's existence in a chance universe with your synapses firing with sound waves triggered by my voice speaking, wiggling the anvil and the stirrup in your inner ear, going down your cochlear channel and creating electrical signals. Why do you have memory? Explain it to me again, please. Right? Yeah. All right. Question 22. What is a fact? I mean,
Broadly or narrowly?
yeah. All right. In the broad sense, we have our definition. What is that?
Yeah.
X
In
is that
fact,
which is true.
That
yeah,
which is true.
that is true.
That was true. And then in the narrow sense, when I observe, I look outside and I see the street lights on. I have a sense perception. I say it's nighttime, right? I don't see
Mm-hmm.
the sun, so it's a sense perception. That can be a fact. Um, Fact comes from facere in Latin, which means to do or that which is done. And you'll find that survives in uh, in the language of a judicial context, like before and after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
What was done before the fact, what was done after the fact. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the fact is that which was done. But that which is true. So then we got a fact. Okay, there's something that's true. We got a presupposition of that which is assumed a priori before the facts of experience. And then we have a thesis. A thesis is an assertion to be proven. It literally means to place a proposition. I just remember the root is tithenai, and it is related to the word tithing. What do you do when you go put your your tithe in the offering plate at church. You place it. And
Yeah, you place your
what's a thesis?
you
You're
place
placing a proposition out there.
Mhm.
Placing it out there.
The
And
way
then,
I put another word in there, I put to propose to propose an assertion or a claim. You know,
yeah. Well, that's what our next question is a hypothesis is a proposed explanation.
yeah.
So
And
you
and I learned on that, Adam, and you
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong. So, I'm thinking when we're hypothesizing something,
Mhm.
we're offering, right, that explanation
Mhm.
or that opinion or that belief, uh, or that educated guess,
Yep.
who done it, right? We have some knowledge,
Mhm.
but it's limited. And based on the limited knowledge that we have, we are offering our educated guess, if you will, right?
Yeah. Um, at one time, it was believed that all swans were white.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody put out a thesis after seeing a white swan and a white swan and a white swan. Go, oh, they proposed that all swans were white. Okay. Then a Dutch explorer goes to Australia in 1697 named Willem de Vlaming, and he sees a black swan. So the hypothesis,
He found a brother from another mother.
yeah. And so the black swan falsified the previous held belief that all swans were white. So in science, the hypothesis being a proposed explanation is based on maybe limited evidence, needing further investigation,
Or incomplete.
right? And so you try to falsify that. Now, when you can't falsify it, you keep trying, like gravity. You pick things up and you drop them, and it's always working. It's unfalsifiable. Then you come up with a theory. And the theory, question 25, is a justified. So you see the progression. We go from just having an assertion to having a proposed explanation based on our thesis. That becomes a hypothesis. And then that thing, we try to falsify it and we can't falsify it. So what do? We go, yeah, it's a good theory. It's a strong theory. Why do they never call it absolute knowledge? Because,
Because no one has absolute knowledge.
bingo, except,
God.
yeah. So,
But the one thing, Adam, that got my attention about this one was the word falsify.
mhm,
So it seems to yeah, my brain just didn't like how that felt.
mhm,
And because okay, we're on this subject of a theory, right?
correct.
And according to question 26, the scientific method uh, is to make cause and effect observations, to formulate hypotheses, and then attempt to falsify them, to make them false, right?
Correct.
Attempt to make them false. That kind of set weird to me. Is I wanted
You're,
to,
you're trying to find a black swan when you think they're all white.
yeah, and what I was thinking too. The word that felt better to me was to take those hypotheses
Mhm.
and try to invalidate them
Yeah.
through challenge.
Yeah. Same thing.
And but my mind got stuck on that false.
Falsify. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're just trying to cancel the belief out.
yeah, and that's what threw me off. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I get thrown off and then I get all
No,
fixated.
it's okay. It's good because these are definitions. And by the way, if your memory wasn't reliable, then anything we're doing here wouldn't matter anyways, right? Um,
True.
as we progress forward, we're gonna well, we'll have some good examples of it. All right. So falsifying it, because we'll get into actual knowledge. What is the definition of knowledge? So the question I would like to ask is, okay, people believe that all swans were white. Did they know it? Well, if it wasn't true, how could they have known it? They never knew it. So there are lots of people that have beliefs, but they don't know them. They believe them. Many times in my apologetic responses, I'll see somebody assert something arbitrarily, and I'll say, I can tell that you believe that, because maybe they put it emotionally. What I really want to know, though, is how do you know it? Right? That's a way for me to get them to think about the epistemological dimension. I can tell you believe it. I can read your words. Obviously, you're committed to that thesis,
Idea.
hypothesis, but how do you know it? What's the justification for you? Right. So I use that. So you did great job on a simple summary of the scientific method, Sir Francis Bacon being the father. Predication. This is when it gets fun because this is a favorite word of Van Til's. And I use English grammar to help me remember what predication is. But predication is when you assert properties of a substance. So what I'm going to do to help with this is I'm going to bring up a diagram that I created just to make it easier. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second and share my whole desktop. Let's go share and we'll do the desktop. Okay, and we're asking this question right here, 27. What is predication? Predication is the process of asserting properties or attributes. You could also say qualities of a substance. So a substance, in the statement, the barn is red. The substance is the barn, and redness is one of the attributes or the properties or the qualities of the barn. And so redness is being predicated of the substance barn. Let's keep going so that we can make the connection quickly. How is predication related to a predicate in grammar? So you remember back in a long time ago, 7th grade, Hamilton, more recently, because, he's in school. A sentence has two parts, right? It's got a subject and a predicate. The subject is what is spoken of. That's what's said. The predicate is what is predicated of the subject. So the barn is the subject. Red is red with the helping verb there. That's the predicate. So I just remember a subject is, this is in grammar, not philosophy. A subject is that which is spoken of, the barn. The predicate is that which is said, is red. Okay, the sky is blue. Question 29. What are two common types of predication? There's hypothetical and there's categorical. Categorical predication is when you're assigning particular attributes to things that have a universal. Okay, and we talked about the three ducks, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. How do we know they were ducks? Well, I see webbed feet, I see a bill, I see they swim in water and go quack, quack, quack. So I've got these qualities of this substance, and it tells me it sits in the category of duckness. Okay, Huey is a particular duck, Dewey's a particular duck, right? Those are the particulars, and they have their substances. That means they have an essence. So these are synonyms. I just want you to get used to them. A substance or an essence. In philosophy, ontology, ontology. Ontology deals with something's essence, its existence. Okay, and so these essences or substances have attributes. Let's keep going. What is individuation? Question 30.
Wait. I kind of want to push you back a bit, Adam.
Okay.
But to answer your question on individuation, right, real quick, let me just do that since you asked.
Mm-hmm.
So individuation is another form of predication.
Correct.
And it has to do with knowing or identifying distinguishing characteristics that make the thing that we're talking about unique.
Correct.
So, but what I was going to ask you about predication, going back to that little grammar lesson you gave. Van Til wasn't, like he said, he was a great thinker, but somehow his English, I think, kind of made it difficult.
Mm-hmm. He was an ideal.
Predication,
He was an idealist philosopher who thought at a very advanced level.
yeah. And so predication, the way from our all this learning that we're doing, I've come to understand that to predicate something, the verb
Mhm.
is to state something, to
Correct.
assert something, to affirm
Exactly right.
something.
Correct.
So if I'm predicating, I'm stating, affirming, right?
You're asserting.
I'm
You're
asserting
asserting.
things.
Yep. You're
And
making.
then I understand that the two parts of a sentence, there's the subject,
Mhm.
the thing, this bottle of water,
Mhm.
and uh, whatever I'm saying of it. It's full of water,
Mhm.
right? Or it's empty. That's the
Your
uh,
pred. Those
that's
are your predicates.
that's the predicate. That's what I'm asserting about it.
Correct.
Okay. Then on question 29, the two common types of predication, this got my attention. The categorical versus the hypothetical.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Hypothetical is just
categorical,
the if then conditional.
that's the part I wanted you to explain a little bit more. So it seems very simple, but it was just today that I really connected that dot.
Yeah, the example used here was that, um, the ground is wet would be an objective if you're seeing it. The if then assertion being the conditional. If it rains, the ground will be wet. That's all. Categorical, or it's called predicate logic, categorical predicate logic, is simply identifying or predicating attributes of substances. And then individuation is when you do it and it makes them unique. Let's imagine,
Hmm.
let's imagine a guy who is from Cabo Verde, an archipelago west of Africa, a descendant of the Portuguese and African slave traders, who is interested in theology, and his name is Milton Gonçalves, and he wants to go to seminary, and he lives in Brockton, Massachusetts. I'm predicating all these things about Milton, right?
Mhm.
What if I get down to another person just like him with every attribute the same? What is it that's going to differentiate him from that other person that has every single attribute
The
identical?
substance.
Yeah,
No, the accident.
it's good. Actually, it's going to be one of the. There could be many. The one thing it would be is whoever this other person is in Milton that has all the things that you have, they're not sitting and occupying the exact same space that you are.
Mhm.
Okay, that's one way to individuate. This is an interesting philosophical exploration when I went through Greg's History of Western Philosophy about quiddity and hasty, the whatness and the thisness, and how do you differentiate things. And medieval philosophers like Duns Scotus and others, many of them deal with this. It's pretty fun to look it up. It's been a while for me, but how do you individuate something? The whole point here is individuation is a form of predication that makes something unique. Okay. And one of the ways to identify a unique individual is that are they have height, width, depth at a given time and a given location. And even though you could have somebody else that had all the other attributes identical to Hamilton, they wouldn't be sitting in the chair that he's sitting in right now because he's there, right?
Well, what about another one? Hamilton has a personality. There are 1,000 personalities, right?
Yeah.
So maybe Hamilton, your personality could be one that's very sober, very
Yeah.
serious, versus your counterpart, may be very whatever, the opposite, right? So
Yep.
Mhm.
that's individual. And why is it important for us to know individuation?
Well, for one, it's dealt with philosophically, as I mentioned, in the medieval philosophers. Um, Van Til would talk about individuation because when he gets into the theory of knowledge, if I say that Gabe Martinez lives in Southern California, likes Michael Frank's jazz music, is in has a real estate broker's license, right? If I start, have I said everything about you by just saying that? No.
No.
And so Van Til talks about, and it's at the back of the catechism, he talks about predicating and doing individuation. And as much as I can predicate about you, Gabe, I haven't exhausted you. Like I could talk about the day you were born, as many things as I possibly can. Have I still exhausted you? And he does that in a context of um, having finite knowledge. God can predicate exhaustively. He knows everyone exhaustively. I do not, never will. And the reason he uses this is when he's challenging unbelief, he'll use the phrase, think of a pearl necklace, which has white beads, and inside is a string that keeps the beads together. And Van Til will often say, he'll be on the train talking to some young kid who's got, working on his master's in science. And he'll say, you need to string all the beads and you can't string two. Right? And part of the reason he's saying that is because to know anything absolutely, you'd have to know everything. You have to be omniscient to know anything for certain, right? So that's individuation.
So individuation is to reveal a weakness in.
He uses it that way to show the limits of human knowledge. I'm just bringing it up because you may encounter it philosophically. You'll hear the term individuation, and I want you to see that, yeah, predication's what I'm doing all the time. When I'm predicating things about somebody that makes them unique, that's individuation.
Okay.
Ton of philosophy devoted to it. It wasn't
Okay.
not to be exhaustive. It's something I'm not an expert on. I'm fascinated to study it. As Greg said, anybody that thinks that Duns Scotus, who talked about individuation, was a dunce, is himself a dunce. These guys in the Middle Ages were quite brilliant, and they dealt with these. When you get to how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, you're going to encounter this conversation around individuation and predication, because it's going to come down to whether an angel is a formed substance or immaterial. But that's different. But the fun part is that really smart people debated that stuff, and some people will hear that phrase, oh yeah, that's just ivory tower talk. No, these were very intelligent people trying to be precise with their thinking, contemplating these questions. All right, question 31. We got 6 more to go, and I want to do our example. So a substance. So we did the subject. Remember, the subject in grammar, or the subject in philosophy, was the person that does the knowing.
Knowing
The object was
is the thing
thing
known.
perceived. And then we had in grammar, the subject was that which is spoken of, and the predicate is that which is said of what is spoken. Now we get to a substance in philosophy. So, and that's where the graphic on the left here that I put together will hopefully help you. What does a substance? Yeah, what does a substance refer to? Substance refers to that which stands under. Substance, that which is under. Okay. A substance can be either material or immaterial.
Right.
Okay, something that's material, we were just talking about it with individuation. I started naming off all these features about Hamilton, but I knew the one thing that made him unique was the space that he occupied, because he exists in time and space in Brockton, Massachusetts. He has height, width, and depth, his body. And in the debate with Gordon Stein, Greg would say, when Stein said, do you believe in spiritual things? And Bonson corrected him, says, abstract is actually the correct philosophical term. And then something that is not abstract is something extended in space. What does it mean to be extended in space? I've got height, I have width, and I have depth. I'm
And location.
And location, and that's a at L, at T, temporal or time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have the identical Hamilton at a different time in the exact same spot with all the same qualities. Like that's never happening, but you get the theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So substance, that which stands under, it can be material or immaterial. Something that's immaterial is not extended in space. Give me an example of something immaterial.
Something immaterial.
Stein asked Bonson, can you name one thing
Laws of
besides
logic.
God? There you go. Laws of logic. How about
Also, hair color.
a hair color?
So, like if you were saying
The universal, yes, not the particular. Yeah.
the example, right, in the mermaids was that one was blonde and the other one was brunette.
Yeah.
Okay, so they both have hair. They're both mermaids.
But the concept of brunette and blonde and redhead, those concepts are universal. So those are the immaterial.
That's why I said hair color.
Yeah, the particular instances of them are, they're not universal, they're particular. But that's very good. So laws of logic, the soul, God, numbers, the ethical obligation to be honest, love, joy,
Morality, right?
right?
Morality,
These are
basically.
immaterial entities.
Yes.
Okay. And
And
that's
so
good to
those
know.
are
You're going to need to know
faithfulness and
that because you're going to have an atheist is going to deny the existence of immaterial entities.
and this is what you were trying to get to with Joe, my cousin, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
That yeah, you remember that you started nicknaming him Joe because
Yeah. I do remember that.
explain that to Hamilton. That was good.
Well, because he kept giving arbitrary answers, and I would ask for a justification, and it was because I wouldn't get an explanation. And sometimes it's not about having a clever answer, it's just holding your ground and saying that's not a justification.
So is it fair to
It's
say that
arbitrary.
when you asked him for the justification and he wouldn't give it, the reason why he wouldn't give a justification is because he was borrowing from the Christian worldview.
Right. Many times that's it. I'm taking away the borrowed capital. I'm asking them to pay rent for what they borrowed.
And by him talking, he'd have to give it back to you, and he didn't want to give it back.
Yeah, they can sense that. Absolutely, Gabe.
Wow.
Um, so substances stand under. The sky is blue. The sky is the substance that possesses the quality or the attribute or the property of being blue. So that's a predication, and the substance is the entity, and that entity can be material or immaterial. Beauty is an immaterial entity. A beautiful woman in particular is a particular instance of someone who has the quality of beauty, which is immaterial. Okay. What types of attributes, and this is where the diagram comes up. What types of attributes do substances possess? Substances possess both essential and accidental attributes. So let's stop there, look at the slide, make it full screen, and take a look at it. So we have 3 mermaids, and they have different colored hair. And so they have multiple attributes. And philosophers like, Rene Descartes, for one, it's actually fun to read him on this topic. We've established that substances can be material or immaterial, and that they'll have attributes that are either essential or accidental. So you have the accidents or the incidents. Those terms are used interchangeably. The reason it's called an accidental attribute is because when you change it, it doesn't change the essence, the ontology. It doesn't change the substance. So I'm mermaid with orange, lime green, and red hair here, and they're all still called mermaids. Why?
Because they have fishtails.
It's exactly. What if we change the fishtail to 2 legs?
Or to, yeah.
We're
Then
not,
you'd be talking
we're talking about women, right? We'd be talking about women, not mermaids.
right.
So the fishtail is an essential attribute. Essential, essence, it's that which makes a thing what it
What
is.
it is.
Ontology is the study of essence. So the ontology of a mermaid looks like a woman, but instead of legs has a fishtail. The fishtail would be one of the essential attributes.
And the hair color.
The hair color is an accidental or an incidental attribute because you can change the hair color. You could remove the hair. They could be bald. You'd still have a mermaid, right?
Right.
So those are accidental attributes. This becomes interesting especially in my recent dialogue with Roman Catholics over the Eucharist, and they talk about the Eucharist being the actual body and blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. And in Roman Catholic teaching on transubstantiation, through the consecration of the elements, the priest in the Mass pronounces the words, and the elements of bread and wine transubstantiate into the actual body and blood of Jesus. But they'll tell you
Under the accident.
the substance changes, but none of the properties change. It's a sacramental change. All the properties remain the same. So when you taste it, it tastes like unleavened baked wafer, and you smell and drink the wine, it smells and tastes like wine. None of the properties, none of the accidents, none of the qualities change, but the substance changes. Okay. And I pointed out in my ongoing conversation with them, I said, that's metaphysical nonsense to say that it underwent a substantive change, but none of the properties changed. Okay. When Jesus changed water into wine at the wedding of Cana, right? In John 2, his very first miracle,
It didn't stay water.
did the properties change? Yes.
Yes.
The substance had to change when the properties of it change. When you change an essential property or essential attribute, you change the substance. No, the substance has changed, but none of the properties have changed. That's hocus pocus. So I thought this little thing would be helpful to you. Accidental attributes are not essential. They don't alter a substance. So with that, let's go back to this guy. We'll just center it and zoom a bit. We did the 32 was what types of attributes. So we've got that. Question 33. This is a great question. How is knowledge historically defined? Coming from Plato, it's defined as justified true belief. We're going to unpack this a bit. So simple definition. What is knowledge? Justified true belief. So we're talking about a substance, belief, with two predicates, justification and truth. Okay. And now we're going to explore what that is. So let's go look at, we're going to go to 37 here. What is
I have a
meant?
question.
What's that? Go ahead, Hamilton.
I just want to maybe have you clarify if you're not already going to do it, but what stuck out to me is is the word justified.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke how people can't justify their positions,
Mm-hmm.
and it's beautiful how this is in the definition of knowledge. That's the component of it
Yeah.
that they're missing.
The
So
justification. Yes.
knowledge is on our side as our method is. I feel like the fact that we are justified in our knowledge uh
Right.
is so important.
Mhm.
Remember, we said earlier, we don't just believe that the Bible is the Word of God because it claims to be the Word of God. There was a justification for that belief. That if I
Hmm.
rejected that belief, I became what the Bible said I'd become. I'd become a fool. I can't be logic. I can't be scientific. I can't be ethical. I can't trust my memory. I lose everything, right? So I have a justification for it. It's a different kind of
Man,
justification, right? It's not a scientific justification. I don't look at the Bible under a microscope and go, yep, everything looks right. I don't just contemplate it only through rational contemplation. Is it coherent? Does it make sense? No. It has a different kind of justification, a transcendental one. But you're onto it. You can apply this to science. We had our thesis, our hypothesis, our theory. We're trying to justify the beliefs that we have. We believe they're true. And then the evidence would be the justification. So let's continue. A belief. What is a belief? These are just basic definitions, so I don't want to spend too much time on them unless you want me to. Belief is a positive cognitive attitude toward a proposition. Knowing is a subclass of believing. That might be interesting for you. Knowing is a subclass of believing. When you know something, you must believe it. It doesn't make any sense to say, I know this to be true, but I don't believe it, right? That wouldn't make sense. So in the Bible,
People talk that way though, Adam, right?
yeah, they do. Yes.
They do. I hear people, like, man,
That's why
so
this
help
is
me. That's what happened, and I don't believe it.
yeah, Greg, his doctorate's in epistemology. He spent a ton of time on this. I can find, if you're interested, I'll find the apologetic series where he really dives into it. But they'll also speak in terms of, I won the lottery. I can't believe it. Is an accommodation of language. It's not, they don't really mean
Yeah,
it sincerely, right? It's a
yeah,
way to express surprise. But yeah, when you think of Plato, justified true belief, okay, what is a belief? Okay, it's that thesis. I have this belief. Okay, I have this positive cognitive attitude towards this proposition that I've placed out there. Okay, and then the next question becomes, what is a true belief? Well, I've got this belief out there, and that belief corresponds to what's really the case. It's true, right? And the Mount Rushmore example, you could say, I believe Mount Rushmore is in California. You couldn't know it because it's in South Dakota, right? And so a true belief must correspond to reality. So I have a belief, it corresponds to reality, but it's not justified yet. So then the question becomes, what is a justified true belief? And that's question 36. A true belief that corresponds to reality must be justified by evidence. And Greg gives a bunch of examples of true beliefs that aren't justified. The broken clock is right twice a day. And if somebody were just happened to look at that clock at the exact moment in reality that it was that actual time, and they concluded from the broken clock what time it was, and then we learned the clock was broken because we waited 10 minutes and it didn't move, we would say, oh, they didn't know what time it was, right? That was luck. They may have guessed. Gabe, you may guess um, the number of jazz artists that have lived since 1950. You might just, but it would be a guess. We would never say, well, it was a justified belief because you guessed and got it right. Okay. So in order for a belief to be considered elevated to the point of knowledge, it's got to be true. It's got to be something you believe that is true, that has a justification, some evidence for it. So this is a great way to end this section with question 37 because it's actually provocative. And that is, do unbelievers then possess justified true belief? I mean, Gabe knows that 2 plus 2 equals 4. The unbeliever looks at 2 and 2, and he knows it's 4. He may be better at math than Gabe is. So is there any difference in their beliefs? They both know it's true. And the answer is, based on Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Unbelievers do not possess justified true beliefs, but rather have unjustified truths that they believe.
Mhm. And those unjustified truths that the unbeliever has
Correct.
are the things that they borrow from us
Yes.
because they cannot make sense of them, but they use them, they borrow them.
Yep. I look at the Marquis de Sade. He enjoyed torturing women. That's where we get our English word sadism from the Marquis de Sade.
Mhm.
Uh, I say it was wrong to torture women. And the atheist says, yes, that's wrong to torture women. So we both have the same belief.
And he cannot justify his belief.
Right. I
His could just be a subjective belief.
exactly.
Somebody can come along and say, I don't think the Marquis de Sade was a bad guy.
The Marquis de Sade would say he wasn't a bad guy,
He
right?
wasn't a bad guy.
Same way
So
you
what
talk about
makes the Marquis de Sade incorrect and what makes the rest of us correct?
this is why we don't do just direct evidential argumentation. The presuppositional method is always going down into the basement of somebody's philosophy and saying, justify these things up here on the surface. Okay. I know
Justify your presuppositions.
exactly. First, you got to know what they are, and then you got to justify them. I know you believe 2 and 2 is 4. For crying out loud, for all I know, the people that built, the bridge that goes across Pensacola Bay here, half of them were atheists. The engineers, the civil engineers, the architects, whatever. Yes, I recognize they have unjustified truths that they believe. But when pressed, why do you believe that? They don't have a justification when they're denying God, persisting in unbelief. So they're holding on to a belief that is true that they can't justify. And all we're doing in apologetics is going, hey, that doesn't make sense. Explain that to me.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
That was a lot. I knew this was going to be a long one because we covered a lot of questions. These things you may not have appreciation for them right now, but and by the way, once you get them down, these 3 sections of philosophical tools, some of them maybe were pedantic and didn't need to be in here, but I threw them in. If anything, it just helps you develop a baseline philosophical vocabulary. Maybe you get really interested in it, you want to go explore it deeper, maybe become a philosopher. Like, great. I find it fascinating. I'm an amateur philosopher who studied with a professional philosopher, who studied with a professional philosopher, that's Bonson and Van Til. And I find it very beneficial to have at least a basic understanding of philosophical terms. What's a metaphysic? What's an epistemology? What's an ethic? What does predication mean? These things I think will take on additional value for you as we move into the methodology. Um, Van Til will often make the phrase, the ultimate question comes, the final, no, the ultimate question comes down to whose mind is the final reference point in all of predication. And so you'll hear predication come up. You read in Van Til. I don't want you to read that and go, oh, I got to look that word up sometime. I want you to know what predication is. And you go, oh, I know what he's talking about there, right? So
Mhm.
that's that. I did for practical application. I've been so let's see who'd we do the first time we did. Who did we look at last week? Practical application. I'm drawing a blank here.
That's a good question. I'm drawing a blank too.
Yeah, so let's see. Week 2, atheism. Oh, it's the burden of proof. Yeah, we talked about the burden of proof with the atheists.
Mhm.
I then this past week have been engaged with Christian deconstruction, which is real seems to be popular. So I thought I would interact with that, read some of it with you guys, see what you think. Let me make it full screen and center it. All this stuff is in the Airtable database. So I've encountered a lot of people that are claiming Christian deconstruction. They were Christians. This individual lady on TikTok talked about the reason she left the Christian faith is she started to really think critically. So,
Oh, and then the one that had that former pastor guy.
yeah, this was her.
Okay.
That was her husband. This is her name is Jenna Rainey, very nice lady. Her husband John Rainey. They went to Moody Bible Institute. Um, she deconstructed before him about 8 years ago, and he followed. He was a pastor. He came like 3 years after her, 3, 4 years. And so I thought, yeah, let's interact. So I made a summary here. I put the links there. I gave you basically the summary. She made some factual mistakes, talked about the Epic of Gilgamesh, that Noah borrowed the account of the flood from, that ancient epic and shared memory, blah, blah, blah. So I just said, since she said it was critical thinking that led me away from Christianity, I said, question, since critical thinking relies on the laws of logic, how would you prove the laws of logic without using the laws of logic? Okay. And here's the first response. Asking someone to prove the laws of logic without using logic is like asking, can you measure a ruler without using length? Or can you prove reality exists without assuming reality exists? It's a self-defeating demand. Now, I want you to know that I think chronologically that wasn't her first response. In fact,
I don't see where you're reading.
oh, am I not sharing my screen?
Yeah, yeah. I just don't see it. Where were you?
Okay. This was
Uh,
this was actually the reason I advanced it a page is so there were multiple links up there, and I'm in multiple of her threads. I was in two or three initially, and she sends this comment here to my original question. Can you prove the laws of logic without using the laws of logic?
that was your question, right?
That was my question. Yeah. This, I should have reorganized this. It's kind of hard to do when you're busy and stuff, but
Yep. Yep.
I do remember those other responses were from Chat GPT.
Hers?
Yeah, her responses. This is
Yeah.
her first response. And so I've thrown out that challenge, and here's what she says. You're all over my comments with comments that don't make sense, are emotionally based opinions masked in big words with
Mhm.
absolutely no backup or proof to your claims, aka word salad. It doesn't do anything but show that you're emotionally attached to being right and haven't thought critically about this at all. Okay, big bold challenge. All I did was ask a question first of all.
Yeah, yeah.
You prove logic without using logic.
Mhm.
So I want to know. Since you think critically, I want to know how do you do it? And I get this question. The reason I this is the first response. That's why when I got these previous ones right here, where she says, you know, it's a self-defeating demand, the laws of logic, like non-contradiction, identity. This is Chat GPT. This is
Mhm.
not it. Okay, are self-evident principles. They're not conclusions we derive from religions. They're the preconditions for any conclusion to exist. Preconditions. Even to question them, you must use them because questioning involves forming coherent, non-contradictory thoughts. So I didn't mention anything about ChatGPT based on the other thread and that conversation going on. I'm like, okay, you just called me word salad for bringing up these kind of terms. So you went to ChatGPT and said, answer this guy. And he comes back with this about preconditions. And I just embraced it and said, good. So you believe in things you can't prove. This is what I'm always doing with atheists. You believe in things you can't. Why? Because they're so used to making fun of people with faith, thinking they're over here in objective reality, only studying the facts. I don't want any faith commitments, none of this mumbo jumbo stuff, right? And so I
Mhm.
go, well, prove your memories lie without using your memory. Prove logic without using logic. Prove induction without assuming the uniformity of nature. You can't do it. Bertrand Russell couldn't. He said it was begging the question. Are you better than him? Like I'm going to boom, hit him with the fact that you need to be humble. We all have faith commitments, but not all faith commitments make sense. Okay. So you believe in things you can't prove. There are multiple instances. Let me zoom a little more for you guys. Gabe's eyes are old. I got to be
Yeah, help me
sympathetic to
out.
that. There are multiple instances of preconditions of intelligibility, such as proving the reliability of your memory without using your memory, or assuming induction, which makes science possible. So the real question, and I dropped that line in because her video, she was championing critical thinking. So the real question for a committed critical thinker is, how will you justify the preconditions of intelligibility without the Christian worldview? Now, she already mentioned with her ChatGPT response these preconditions. I'm like, great. So you got these preconditions. How do you justify the preconditions
Adam,
without the Christian worldview?
yeah, Adam, I don't think she understood your question, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, no, I doubt that she did.
I don't think she understood your question, and she went to Chat GPT to try to just not to save face.
Of course. And I'm okay with that because there are other people reading it and
Yes.
I'm witnessing in a crowd. And
Yeah.
this is one of the occupational hazards of doing this, not at coffee one. If I was with her one-on-one at coffee, wouldn't be using her phone. I go, no, I want to know what you believe, not ChatGPT. Okay, you
I
tell me.
mean, the answer that she gave tells a lot about her understanding. When she says the preconditions of intelligibility don't require a specific Christian framework.
Yeah, I think this is another Chat GPT response. Rationality, memory, and induction. She didn't know what induction is. That's why she called what I said a word salad,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? Can be understood as emergent properties of consciousness within a lawful self-consistency. I mean, this is crazy number of assumptions in there that if I was sitting down one-on-one, I would go, okay, hang on a second. Emergent, arising suddenly, properties. This is why you need the philosophical terms. The properties, qualities of consciousness. How do you know what consciousness is? I'm sorry. Let me just draw out your worldview. What's real? What's true? What's right? Let's put it on paper. Let's get it out on the flesh, and then I'll show you mine. And let's just see what these accomplish. And I want to see if you actually, if what your philosophy is actually supports what you're claiming here. People will just ramble and say anything. We can explore truth through observation and logic without appealing to a particular religious lens. Okay. One of the good things about TikTok is you don't have to answer right away and you can give a reasoned answer. You can think about your answer. One of the bad things about TikTok is you don't have to answer right away. You can just go look it up in ChatGPT and throw paragraphs of word salad back at them that you don't understand. So you're not being honest.
Mhm.
I said claiming rationality, memory, and induction are possible, quote, can be, is not a justification. How can a finite mind know an absolute truth? And then because she's deconstructed from Christ, I said, when you abandoned the self-attesting Christ, this is a quote from Van Til, you severed the intellectual umbilical cord between he and you. You gave up a worldview that can justify those preconditions of intelligibility. How does a Christian justify them? And I give him my examples. Logic. Why am I logical as a Christian? Because God made me in his image with a mind and a will. Logic is a reflection of how God thinks, and I'm obligated to think his thoughts after him. Science. How do I justify induction? God made the universe, top of the page, both immaterial and material, and he imposed order on his creation so that I can expect the future to resemble the past. Ethics. Why must I behave a certain way? God is holy. He demands we emulate his character. Where do I learn all this? God revealed through the special revelation in the scriptures of the Old and New Testaments. How do I know it's true? Because rejecting his revelation reduces my worldview to an arbitrary absurdity, as you are demonstrating. I take little pot shots sometimes.
Wow. Yeah.
Skeptics counter, wait, you only believe that through faith, to which I will respond, absolutely. The difference is my faith commitment gives me sight, while non-Christian faith blinds your eyes and leads to intellectual suicide. Is this just another big word salad? Taking a reference to the previous
Mhm.
post. I'll simplify the whole thing by quoting a children's hymn you've probably sung before. Jesus loves me, this I know, my metaphysic, for the Bible tells me so. My
My
epistemology. Soli Deo Gloria. Now, in a different thread, so she gave me that one there. Um,
did she answer that?
she did not, she jumps around on these different threads. That's the challenge. We're in multiples.
Okay.
So she says, you're all of my, I said, listen, with respect, I've commented on 2 posts asking sincere questions. Of all the decons that keep popping up in my feed, you appeared the most measured, promoting critical thinking. So I liked your content. By the way, I'm happy for your successful art business. That's awesome. She's got a great art business, YouTube channel, teaches art. Just because you don't understand something, labeling it word salad doesn't falsify it.
Mm.
Claiming I have no proof is ignorant conjecture. So remember the checklist in the catechism in the back, right? Arbitrary. There are four different types of arbitrary. One of them was ignorant conjecture. One was mere opinion. One was unargued
Uh,
guess, right? This is ignorant conjecture.
that was the other one. What was the other one? Gosh, I have to remember these and I can't. Anyway, go
Yeah.
on.
I said, you're in no position to make good on that universal negation. I have no proof. How do you know I have no proof? I mean, we just started the conversation. In fact, that's what I said next. The conversation has just begun. I'm more than happy to provide evidence to anchor my claims. You assert that I'm emotionally attached to being right and haven't thought critically about this at all. So I went from ignorant conjecture. I said, that's both ignorant and arrogant.
Mhm.
How can you know what I don't think about? Am I supposed to be emotionally attached to being wrong? You started out well, but when you challenged to think critically, you abandon it for an emotional response of thetic, as in thesis, placing thetic, unproven claims. Given the chance, I would help you locate the crucial assumptions in the basement of your philosophy and compare them to the Christian worldview. I challenge, it wasn't critical thinking that led you away from Christianity, but rather a lack thereof. Regards. So I give her that, right?
Wow, that was a good answer.
Oh, thank you. So time
Sure.
goes by.
That's beautiful.
I mean,
Then
that was really, really good, Adam. I
thank you.
loved it.
Well, that's part of the benefit of um, the social media venue of, listen, I want to give a good answer and I'm not just going to fire right off. If I
I
don't,
just thought of another reason, another good benefit, and that is that regardless of what she answers you here,
Mhm,
regardless, she can go back. It's in print, it's out there, it's written down,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
she can go back and think about it and refer to it and when you're at a coffee shop and you're talking face to face, one on one, and you give an answer like this, it's in the air.
Yeah, exactly. It's not written down. It's not in
But this
scripture.
is now inscripturated.
Yes. Amen to that.
So another benefit, right?
Yeah, it is. It's got risk that you'll get insincere responses. You'll get people doing demagoguery and performing for onlookers and afraid to be vulnerable and say, you know what, you made a good point. I'm going to go ponder that. You don't get the humility that,
Yeah.
but this is one of the benefits is the
He
permanence.
doesn't want to lose followers.
That's a big thing, right?
So that's another negative, right? That
Yep.
they're not going to concede because
Yep.
if they concede, they give up authoritative value.
Hmm. So look at this guy, Frankie Marr. Now he's in here watching Jenna and myself interact, and now he wants to jump in. I went to a Christian college for 1.5 years. People don't understand that when you really start studying the Bible like a textbook, aka putting on your logical hat, most people start to deconstruct. Well, okay, let's go
General,
at this.
yeah, that's a total. What do you call it? That's a total
That's
general.
arbitrary, mere opinion.
Yeah, mere opinion.
Questions.
Exactly.
Critical thinking relies on the laws of logic. How would you prove the laws of logic without using the laws of logic? I give him the question. I think I'm picking, then he was humble. He says, I think I'm picking what you're trying to lay down, but I don't want to make that assumption. Are you trying to set up the question similar to the how can you prove God exists? And I said, yes, my friend. It's a presuppositional apologetic based upon a transcendental argument. TAs are proven based on the impossibility of the contrary. For example, attempting to prove the reliability of your memory without using your memory is an example of a transcendental similar to the laws of logic, as I asserted previously. All worldviews begin with faith commitments held a priori. We covered these today before the facts of experience. The Christian, let me go to the top now. I got this zoomed way in. The Christian proof of the worldview is that without it, you can't prove anything. Peace. Frankie replies, a true atheist believes there is a possibility that God exists. However, the evidence science has put forth is more convincing. Has he shown the evidence? And that our existence is truly a miracle. Okay, wait, you believe in miracle and you're quoting science? Hmm.
Yeah.
However, if there is a creator, or as you call it, God, how do you prove your version of God to be the right one? Personally, I prefer the miracle of existence rather than being an experiment for a narcissistic supernatural being. Right? So there's a lot here to deal with. But you can see when people you're looking, as Bonson said, I'm looking for three things.
That
Arbitrary.
was a regurgitation right there.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Arbitrary, inconsistent preconditions. Those three things. So I said traditionally, an atheist was someone who negated God's existence, while an agnostic was someone who found the evidence for God insufficient. Today, skeptics use the strong label of atheist, but employ the weak definition of agnostic. It makes no difference because both are allies in their intellectual rebellion.
Mm.
Both exclude the possibility of the Christian religion, which teaches that God has revealed himself with certainty, Romans 1:18 through 22, so that man is without excuse. How do I prove the triune God of Scripture is the correct God? Through the impossibility of the contrary. No other worldview has a self authorizing claim that provides a justification for the preconditions of intelligibility. Logic, science, morality, universals, particulars, free will, determinism, mind body dualism, etc. Then I Made a personal comment. My mentor, the late Dr. Greg Bonson, PhD in epistemology and pastor in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, was a gifted philosopher and skilled defender of the Christian worldview. If you search online, YouTube, you should be able to find a couple of his Does God Exist debates. Number one, the 1985 debate against Gordon Stein at UC Irvine, where Greg attempted to show that logic assumed the Christian worldview. Number two, the 93 debate at UC Davis against ACLU attorney Edward DeBosch, where Greg persuasively argued that induction, science, required the Christian worldview. So that was my conclusion with this guy, Frankie. He may have replied one more time. I just didn't update the database. Then I get this lady comes in, right? And she's, the fat's in the fire and she's fit to be tied. She says, I had been a Christian for 30 years. So I'm beginning my question with her because, she's chiming in. Until I started asking questions, and those questions were not welcome, which made me ask even more questions. So I said, what was the toughest question you would ask that never got answered? And she says, if God is all knowing, he knew what would happen in the garden, so he set us up for failure from the beginning. Here's the original creator of this whole post, Jenna. She goes, right! Exclamation. So she's like, I got a fan. I got some reinforcements. And I said, just like Job learned, God has a morally sufficient reason for the evil he ordains. And then I just leave it. Is that a problem for you? Of course, it's going to be a problem. They'll be apoplectic with that answer. So she goes, lots of la, lots of la, la, la. That's a problem, period. I said, ridicule is not a reasoned refutation. And then I give an answer. Consider a young child with a facial laceration that needs stitches. A loving parent pays a doctor to poke needles in the child's face, causing intense pain, and this confuses the child. The child not understanding doesn't invalidate the parent's loving reason for causing the pain. Your finite understanding of evil does not negate God having a morally sufficient reason for it. So I left her with that one. Then the top of this one, she says, him telling them to kill everyone and keep the young virgins for yourself. So I said, this, the Canaanites, right? God
Yeah.
them out, right? All their horrible practices. I said, do you approve of the Canaanite practices, or should evil be punished? The Canaanites brought divine judgment upon themselves because of gross wickedness, such as ritual prostitution, child sacrifice to Molech, burning their kids alive, incest, adultery, homosexuality, bestiality, occult practices. Virgins were not taken as sex slaves. That was condemned by the seventh commandment, but were spared for marriage and covenantal obedience to God. And she had some more responses after that with me, to which they were all short and more of her just ridiculing. It's ladies like that, especially people who think, these decons, they're overrepresented by women. There's not a lot of men doing that, but
Yeah.
tend to be much more emotional. They think with their feelings. They just dismiss things they don't understand. If you use a big word like a presupposition,
Yeah.
you instantly earn their ire and ridicule. But I think overall it's a successful defense. Greg says we don't change hearts, we close mouths. And whether I'm talking to atheists or Catholics or these guys, they're all getting forced to justify their claims. They're unprepared to deal with a transcendental argument. Van Til would often say, and we'll probably in our study, we'll read through Why I Believe in God by Van Til, because I quoted part of what he says in there. As he ended that book, he said, I'm challenging you to go into the basement of your philosophy and see what's been gathering there while you were busy with the surface inspection of life. And I point that out. I'm like, I'm not going to debate child sacrifice with you. I'll bring those up, but I'm not going to do that without talking about a worldview. And
on the Canaanite question, right? When she brought up the Canaanites,
yeah,
there seems to be the immediate response of us to say, well, did you see how evil they were? And we're giving them I feel like we're giving our opponents way too much credit by even saying that to them.
Well, and
Should we maybe say to them, and why do you have a problem with that?
I do it all the time, Gabe. That's what I meant when I said the Marquis de Sade enjoyed torturing women. That was a good thing, right? I'll do it when I'm talking to somebody about evolution and they complain about, Native Americans. I go, wait a minute, time out. You're evolutionists, right? Survival of the fittest. The white man was more fit, therefore what he did was good. I'm confused. You're celebrating the fact that the white man conquered the Native American, right? Because that's Darwinianism. Oh, you're angry about that? Well, that goes against Darwin and survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
I, as a Christian, have a critique of war and abuse and the.
So
I do
going,
that all the time. That's, to me, that's the reductio ad absurdum, is
yes,
taking them into their presupposition. Oh yeah, everything's a chance universe, and we're just matter in motion, and it's survival of the fittest. That's what advances the species. Well, then I'll look for something in their worldview, and they go, oh, the patriarchy. They'll like be against men and the patriarchy. I'll go, well, but over here you said everything was just matter in motion and it's survival of the fittest. It looks like the patriarchy over here looks like they're more fit to survive than you, and that's why they've subjugated you, or they're more powerful.
she brought up the problem of evil.
Correct. They always do.
And so
Make evil make sense without Christianity.
make evil make sense without Christianity, because I really think that as you're giving them such amazing answers, and I really think you're shooting so many holes at them that they're too busy bleeding to death to understand what's happening.
Well,
That's how I see it. Because
yeah,
I don't think they're dealing with what
yeah,
you're telling them. They're not dealing with it. Yeah, it just seems like you're really throwing some huge rocket fire at them. And
yeah. It's incendiary.
yeah,
But I try to do it, again, ASMG, attitude, humble boldness. God, God converted me, gave me this worldview, turned me from foolishness to wisdom. I can't take credit for it. My method, my starting point, I'm going to begin with God's word. I'm not going to begin with neutrality that nobody knows for sure, and then try to get them from that belief over to my belief that, this body got out of the grave and now you can come to church. I'm going to contrast the worldviews. I always push that. I'm like, wow, you're making a lot of claims. Based on that, do you believe in this? I'm trying to paint, or I might ask somebody, um, this is my humble request to try to figure out what your epistemology or theory of knowledge is like. How do you know what you know? Is what I really want to know. Because I want to compare it to mine. I want to compare it to the Bible, right? So I'm always on the method piece trying to um, codify, take an inventory of this individual that I'm talking to, the fool. I want to take an inventory of their philosophy.
yeah, this is basically what we call the internal critique.
Yes.
That's right. Hamilton, do you remember reading that?
Yes, I remember you mentioned it when I was dealing with somebody online. Uh, can I share something? I felt like
Yes.
uh, when I get confronted with a reply or a
Mhm.
question or a statement, I don't immediately draw back and then regroup myself and come with a good argument.
Mhm.
It draws my emotion and
Mm.
it frustrates me sometimes.
Yeah.
I like how you respond. You're always firm and nothing shakes you. That's the point that's where I'm trying to get to.
A lot of that's going to be repetition
Time.
and just building up your worldview, Hamilton.
Hmm.
Having a clear understanding of it. I've done this a while. I'm a sales engineer by profession for many years. I'm very analytical. So there could be part of my personality, my temperament, um, makes it easier for me to pick this stuff up. That's why I did the catechism. Because I know people like my friend here, Gabe, who's known about Bonson for a long time. But when people just go out and grab the books, it's it's a lot there to try to make practical, right? And so the goal of this catechism was short chunks, question answer, diagrams in the appendix. Like this is how you do it. This is practical, right? And so if you practice this stuff, you'll get faster. And it won't take as long. You won't have as much latency, delay. Okay. Right now, you're just, again, you can practice on yourself. And then,
So,
I'm glad you.
can I use an analogy, Hamilton, to I
Mhm.
feel like, do you remember when the internet was new? I mean, you're pretty young, and we had these dial-up modems. Do you remember that?
No.
You
Casey
don't.
Young. Yeah, that was 1995, even before 95. That's in the late 80s.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
DBS, bulletin board services.
So we yeah. So it's like you're on dial-up. You're using a dial-up modem when you're starting, and 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 Adam he's on a T1 line, you know. So the bandwidth coming in to his computer is is practically limitless. So yours and mine were a lot more limited. We're using, our technology hasn't caught up to him, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Or
But
think of the process. Yeah.
I like how we're trying though, because
Mhm.
that's what Van Til and Boston would want to see. Somebody like
Absolutely.
Adam
Yeah.
teaching the lay people in the church how to do this. That's why I
Yeah.
feel like we should put this online. I feel like
Yeah.
Adam has a lot to offer when it comes to apologetics. His
Yeah.
knowledge could produce a lot of videos, a lot of shorts, a lot of messages. You can put all these things out there and keep going because it's gonna benefit a lot of people. That's how we learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think maybe you guys were kicking around the idea, and I'll go ahead and stop the recording at this point. We've been going a while. Um, give me one second here. Meeting, stop recording.